All right, we're continuing on now with the different ducts in the male reproductive system. We're going to talk now about the vas or the ductus deferens. Vas deferens, ductus deferens, same thing. Basically, what happens is the vas deferens receives sperm from the epididymis, which remember, the sperm came from the testes, and it's transported through and out of the scrotal sac up through the abdominal cavity. It goes up through the inguinal canal, which we don't have labeled here. Sorry about that. The inguinal canal is out over here, okay? And it joins over here with the seminal vesicle. Oops, let me get my red ink going here again. So the seminal vesicle is right back here, joins with the seminal vesicle, and then goes down through the ejaculatory duct. So this is going to become the ejaculatory duct. This is where you have the joining of fluid from the prostate gland and fluid from, or urine from the urinary tract if urine is going to be expelled out of the male reproductive system. So now I'm sorry it stretched a little bit here. I wanted to maintain this picture that we've been looking at so that you could have a reference to the different things that we're talking about. So the supportive sex gland, so we just talked about all of the tubes, all of the ducts in the male reproductive system, which ends eventually in the urethra. The accessory supportive sex glands are going to be producing semen, okay? And we're stopping here before we get to the urethra because we just got to the seminal vesicle, all right? Secretions from the accessory sex glands average anywhere from 3 to 5 mils per ejaculation, and that contains within the ejaculate about 100 million sperm. So that's a lot of gametes, a lot of possible genetic recombinations. So the seminal vesicles, which we were talking about, are pouch-like glands that produce 60% of the seminal fluid. Oops, sorry. 60%. Let's just do it. So here's the seminal vesicle right here. All right. And so 60% of semen is made from the fluid in the seminal vesicle. It's kind of yellowish. The secretion is very thick. Lots and lots of fructose here. The fructose provides energy for the sperm to swim. So it's a carbohydrate-rich solution. Now the prostate, let's come back here real quick. Here's the prostate, just inferior to the urinary bladder. The prostate is, it's kind of funny how they say it's a donut-shaped organ. It's kind of like, I don't know, I think an upside-down pear-shaped organ myself. It's located below or inferior to the urinary bladder, and the urethra passes through the prostate gland. So interestingly, what's going on here is that the prostate itself makes a secretion. 30% of the seminal fluid or semen volume comes from the prostate, and the fluid is kind of a thinner, kind of a milky fluid itself. It activates the sperm and keeps the sperm kind of healthy, and it also helps the sperm with their motility, with their swimming ability. Now the prostate itself can change over time. So right here is the duct joining the seminal vesicle to the urethra. The prostate gland itself can become inflamed due to infection, injury, and so forth. And what that does is it blocks the passage of urine out of the urinary bladder, which, can be quite painful, especially if urine builds up. An enlarged prostate gland, which is what happens in some men as they get older, also pinches in the urethral opening and makes it difficult for urination. So sometimes what will happen is men will have to have treatment for an enlarged prostate. They try not to remove the prostate if they can help it because it's so intimately tied to the rest of the male reproductive system, and it can cause problems with valves associated with the urinary bladder if the prostate's removed. All right, next gland, the bulbourethral gland or the Cowper's gland. I don't know why it's called Cowper. It's somebody's name, I'm sure, which has nothing to do with being a cow. The Cowper's glands are these little tiny glands right here that are inferior to the urethra. So here's the prostate right here. Here's the urethra. This is the pubic symphysis. So this is the bone, the end of the pubic bone, the underside of the pubic bone, the pubis. The Cowper's duct or glands are connected two little ducts that will secrete mucus into the urethra. And this mucid fluid is a very, very low percentage of seminal fluid overall. However, again, since it's a mucus, it's kind of slippery and it allows the sperm to escape through the urethra easily. It allows them to slide through. Okay, we're going to talk about external genitals now, the external genitalia, and the penis and the scrotum together are genitalia. The penis alone is a genital, so genitalia is plural, okay? So genitalia is plural. Yeah, English lesson in the male reproductive system, right? The penis itself in humans has 3 columns of erectile tissue, and 2 are dorsal on the penis, and we call those the corpora cavernosa, and 1 is ventral, okay, on the underside of the penis, called the corpus spongiosum. The urethra travels through the corpus spongiosum. All 3 columns extend all the way down through the penis, through the glans penis itself, the end, all the way to the urethral opening. And then you'll see right here, this edge of the glans penis is called the corona. The glans penis itself is covered by a foreskin that may be surgically removed. It can be removed. Usually it's removed when the male is very, very young, when they're babies, but it can be removed later on in life surgically by a surgeon, obviously. And that process is called a circumcision. Okay, so, oh, you know what? Let's go back a little bit more here. Now, the corpora cavernosa and the corpus spongiosum are very, very they have lots of pockets. These pockets fill with blood to produce an erection for sexual reproduction. And so, believe it or not, mammals, and even not all mammals, humans are one of the only species that have erectile tissue, or corpora cavernosa and corpus spongiosum, that produce an erection. So it's an actual erectile tissue. Other mammals, say for example like whales, dogs, there's a small bone that the animal pushes into the penis, allowing the penis to become erect for fertilization. So yeah, it sounds really kind of crude, but that's what the term boner came from, the small bone that is used to extend the penis in other mammals. It's actually called an usk in whales. And how do I know this? Because I used to study marine biology. You learn all kinds of things in biology. All right, so disorders of the male reproductive system. So disorders may or may not cause reduced reproductive ability or infertility. Infertility just means that it's harder for reproduction to occur or fertilization to occur for a variety of reasons. A total inability is called sterility. Some of these diseases, oh, there's the eyeing, may cause sterility, but let's first talk about disorders of the testes that cause infertility. Oligospermia is a low sperm production. That can be the result of injury. It can just be natural to the individual. It can be a genetic thing as well. Cryptorchism is when the testes in a male do not descend out of the body cavity. So let me go back a couple slides here. And you'll see that the testes lie outside of the body cavity, inside of the scrotum. The reason why the testes lie outside of the body cavity, okay, so here's the body cavity, right? It's way up here. And if you think about the female reproductive system, the ovaries are way up here in the abdominal pelvic cavity. Testes all the way on the outside. The reason that is because the stem cells that produce sperm are highly sensitive to temperature. And by allowing the testes to extend outside of the body, to descend, I should say, during development outside of the body, that allows a slightly lower temperature and allows the appropriate development of sperm. So that's a big deal. Cryptorchism can lead to infertility and sterility because the testes never descend out of the pelvic cavity. If that happens, there is a surgery that doctors can do to allow the testes to be released into the scrotum. Testicular cancer, believe it or not, testicular cancer is a lot more common than you would think in young men. It's the most common form of cancer in men ages 25 to 35, and I would say that even men that are 20 years old can develop testicular cancer. Typically, you're going to have an individual testicular cancer might be genetically predisposed to testicular cancer. It may run in the family, basically, or it may be the result of exposure to compounds in the environment, like chemicals and so forth, or it can be the result of injury. Disorders of the prostate. So benign prostate hypertrophy. Hypertrophy always means to grow. Enlargement of the prostate that happens as men get older is called benign prostate hypertrophy. It just grows and gets larger. Prostate cancer, on the other hand, that does generate prostate hypertrophy, but through a cancer mechanism. And so this is one of the leading causes of death, in cancer deaths in men over the age of 50. And so brachytherapy, which was developed to treat prostate cancer, actually uses these really small radioactive, they say seeds, they're actually gold beads, tiny gold beads that are placed inside the prostate. They actually use like an air gun to blow them into the prostate. And they treat, the radioactivity treats the cancer cells and pretty effectively eliminates the cancer cells. And at the same time, it actually it shrinks the prostate itself, because cancer causes the prostate to hypertrophy. Other disorders in the penis and in the scrotum, phimosis is a super tight foreskin that is unable to be retracted over the glands because it's too small. And then paraphimosis is the skin that cannot be replaced after it's been retracted. So these are both disorders of the foreskin. And so sometimes when phimosis or paraphimosis occurs, often in a young man, they'll recommend circumcision. Impotence is the failure to achieve an erection of the penis. And impotence is oftentimes an indicator of circulation problems. Because remember, we looked at the corpus spongiosum, and let's come back here real quick, and the corpora cavernosa. If there are issues with blood circulation, there will probably be issues with erectile function as well. And so what doctors always say is, if there's an issue of impotence, you might want to start paying attention to circulation or blood pressure. Hydrocele is accumulation of fluid inside of the scrotum. Why this happens, there are a lot of reasons why this can happen. It could be an infection. It could be preceding an inguinal hernia. An inguinal hernia, let's come back here to another picture again. We can look at this. An inguinal hernia occurs when there's a breakdown right here in the abdominal pelvic tract, and a piece of basically digestive system slides down into the scrotum. And if the inguinal hernia is large enough, which is pretty scary, right? A large protrusion or a large rip in the lower or inferior abdominal pelvic cavity can allow large pieces of the large intestine to sneak down or drain down into the scrotum, which causes all kinds of issues in terms of cutting off blood flow to the intestine, and can cause issues with, oh my goodness, absorption, water retention, all kinds of stuff. So inguinal hernias are nasty things, and that's why they do I'm sure the gentlemen have already experienced this. That's why doctors check for inguinal hernias by having you look to the side and cough. They're checking to see if they can detect a disruption or protrusion of tissues from the abdominal pelvic cavity or organs. The hypospadias is the urethral opening on the underside of the glans penis or in the shaft, not straight at the end. And then the epispadias is where the urethra actually is located on top. And so usually what will happen is the urethra is shifted through surgery and put towards the end. So the overall summary of the reproductive system, in males and females, the reproductive systems are adapted to function to permit sperm or ova to be fertilized and for the normal development of and birth of the offspring. The organs produce and store mature sperm, or in the female ova, this should say ova here, to store ova in females and for reproduction and fertilization to occur. I said that a little bit backwards. It is for the organs to produce, store, and introduce sperm to the female reproductive tract. I don't like reading these to you guys. I just like to, talk about it. Anyways, that's it for this particular chapter, and see you next time.